Hello everybody and welcome back to part 3 of the Slack bot tutorial. So in this video, we're going to be going over commands. This one will be a little bit shorter than the previous one. I apologize that one was about 20 minutes long, but I did need to cover everything. And this will show us how we can use like slash commands inside of Slack and send that to a specific endpoint on our server that can handle that and do something with it. Now I want to make it very clear that commands are different than events. So if we look actually at the Slack API here, or if we even just look at our Slack thing, right? Whenever we do something in the channel, that's kind of an event, right? Like if I react to this message, so say I go here and I, add a reaction, or maybe I even edit this message, right? So maybe I mark it as unread, or I pin it to the channel, or edit it. That is an example of an event. Now a command is something like this, right? If I go slash message or slash me or whatever, these are commands. So how can we add specific commands, custom commands to our bot? Well, what we can actually do is we can go here, we can go to slash commands, and we can create a new command. Now, it's actually pretty straightforward. What we do is we add the command that we want. So in this case, the first command that I'm going to show us is how we can get the amount of messages that a user has sent. So I'm going to say message-count is going to be this command. Now it's asking me for a request URL. The request URL is what we're going to send the command to, or send this event to, or whatever you want to call it, when this command is called. So this needs to be the same thing that we used for our events. So if we look at our forwarding, we see that we have this address right here. So we're going to add that as the base of our URL. So we're going to put that like that. And then we need to make some endpoint on our server that can handle this specific request. So if I go back to my app here, what I need to do is make a new route or make a new endpoint, whatever you want to call it. An endpoint is just like, slash home or slash back or slash login. Those are all examples of endpoints that we can hit with this request. So I'm going to say at app.route, and this is the basic way that we add a new route or we add a new endpoint to our server. So at app.route, and then I'm going to say slash, and in this case, what am I going to call it? Message-count. All right, so there we go. We're going to add that endpoint, and we're going to say define message_count, like that. And then inside of here, we're going to return a response and then 200. Now I'll explain what this is in a second, but go up to the top of our program, and from Flask, what we need to do is we need to import request and we need to import response with a capital. So if we go down here, now what we're doing is returning response 200. All this is saying is, okay, I think we actually need brackets here. My apologies. We're going to return some empty response whenever we hit this endpoint, and we're going to return the status code 200, which simply stands for OK. Now, you may be familiar with the status code 404, endpoint not found or URL not found. This is just saying, hey, we're just going to tell whatever hits this that, yep, well, we're all good, even though we haven't even really done anything inside of this function, right? So let's get out of this for 1 second, and let's go back to the thing right here. And now what we're going to do is add the endpoint message-count. So we're going to add that base URL, right, which is what we used for the events and our callback and all that stuff. And then we're going to say slash message-count. We can add a short description. In this case, returns your current message count. You can tell I've already prepared doing this before. And what I will do is simply save this. All right, so you've changed the permission scope of your app. Please reinstall your app. Okay, great. So we got to do that. Let's go reinstall. Press allow, and now we are good. All right, so if we go back now to our ngrok thing, we should, actually won't see any because it hasn't hit yet, but essentially we need to run this server. So let's rerun this. And now if we hit this slash message count, endpoint, something will happen. So let's go back to Slack and let's go slash message-count. Let's hit that, and we failed with error, dispatch failed. So something happened here inside of message count. Let's actually have a look here. It says 405 method not allowed. So what does that mean? Well, what happened here is we sent what's known as a post request to this route. Now, by default, when we set up a route in Flask, it only accepts the method of get. So there's all these different HTTP methods, right? We have post, we have get, we have put, we have delete. What we need to do here is simply define that we are allowed to send a post request. So I'm going to say methods inside of here in all capitals. Inside of a list, I'm going to put post. Now, let's say that we wanted to potentially receive a get and a post request. Well, we would simply do get, post, right? Pretty straightforward. In our case, we only want post, And post, the reason we have that is because we're just going to be looking for some data to be posted to this endpoint. So now that I added this, if I rerun the server and we go back to ngrok, or sorry, we go back to Slack, my bad, we resend this, we should actually be good. So if we have a look here, we can see in our Flask console, we actually got the post request to /message count. If we go to ngrok, we can see that 200, happened when we sent the post request to message count. So now the question is, how do we actually do something with this command, right? I want to keep track of all of the messages that a user sent and then tell them how many that they've sent back. Well, there's a few different steps here. It doesn't really matter what order we do these in, but first I will show you how we can get information about the user from this route, right? Because we no longer have a payload like we had previously. Let me go back to full screen. So I can't really do the same thing I did before where I print out the payload and then I get the event and all of that. I can't do that. I don't have a payload. So what I actually need to do is I need to get the information from the post request form is what it's called. So it's kind of like the data that was sent with the post request. It wasn't sent as a payload. It was sent in a different way. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, okay, data in lowercase equals request dot, in this case, form. Now form is going to give me a dictionary of all of the key value pairs that were sent here. So let me just print out data and show you what it looks like. So print data. And now let's go back to Slack and let's type hi like that. Oh, sorry, what am I saying? Hi /message count. Let's run that. The command happened and well, it would be helpful if our server was running. So my bad about that. Go back to Slack again, /message count. And now you can see that we print out all of this stuff. So if we have a look here, we get an immutable multi-dictionary. You don't have to know what that means, but that's just the data type that essentially we're getting when we look at the form. And we can see we have a token, we have a team ID, domain, channel ID, channel name, user ID, and all of this other information, right? So the username is Tech with Tim. This was the command. This was the text, because we could technically do something like /message count and then add, some arguments afterwards. We're not doing that in this situation, but we could do that if we wanted to. So what we need to do now is get the user ID from this immutable dictionary. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, all right, user underscore ID equals data dot get. And then inside of here, what are we going to type? Well, you guessed it, user ID. Now, of course, we also can check to make sure this wasn't the bot, but we know the bot's not really going to be doing a command, right? So that's not something we need to be worried about. And then we can return to them the amount of messages that they have. So in this case, let's just actually print something to the screen, or let's send a message back into that channel and just tell them some random thing for now, just to make sure that this is working. And then we'll actually make it send them the amount of messages. So we actually want the channel ID as well. So let's grab the channel ID while we're at it. We'll say channel underscore ID equals data dot get channel underscore ID. And then for the text, let's send back, I got the command. All right, so running, let's go back to Slack and let's see /message count. And I got the command gets returned to us. Awesome, so that indeed is working. So now we need a way to actually track how many messages that they've sent. So this is pretty straightforward. We could do this in a database, but I'm not gonna be worrying with the database right now. We might do that later on in the series. I'm just gonna make a dictionary here and I'm just gonna say message underscore count equals this. What we're going to store inside of this dictionary is keys that are equal to the user ID and values that are equal to the number of messages that they've sent. So I'm going to say user ID, colon, and then whatever the number of messages is. Now to do this is pretty straightforward. We're going to go inside of the message function here. And same thing here, if the bot is not here, so if it's not the bot, then what we will do is we'll say, okay, if user ID in message counts, then what we'll do is we will say message counts user ID plus equals 1. The reason I'm doing this is because I'm essentially saying is, all right, if we've already added this user ID into our message counts dictionary and notice that it starts off blank, then all we have to do is increment the value that's stored for this key, right? We just need to increment that number. Otherwise, what we need to do is say message counts user ID equals 1, because if this is the first time that we are like keeping track of this user, maybe it's the first time they sent a message, we need to add them into this dictionary. And then we'll just default or instantiate their value to 1 because this is the first message that they sent. So hopefully that makes sense, but this will simply add up all of the messages. We'll add in users if they're not already in there. And if they're already in there, we'll simply increment the value. Now keep in mind, this is going to be stored in memory, right? So in RAM. So if we ever stop this server and rerun it, then this value is going to reset. So obviously this would make sense to put in a database, but that's a little bit beyond the scope of this tutorial. So maybe we'll handle that later on. But anyways, what we can do now is go back to message counts. And now rather than just returning text, we can simply return that user's number of messages. So the first thing that we're going to check is we're going to make sure that the user ID is inside of the message counts, right? So we can do this in a few different ways, but actually what I'll do is I'll say message underscore count equals, and then message underscore counts dot get, and we'll do user underscore ID comma 0. Now what this is saying is, okay, let's look inside of the message counts dictionary, trying to find the user ID. If we don't find that, and only if we don't find that, return 0. If we do find that, return the value that was stored for our user ID. Hopefully that makes sense. And then for the text, we can say messages colon, and I'm actually going to use an F string. Again, you need to be using Python 3.6 or above for this to work. We'll say message, and then inside of here, message underscore count. What this will do is simply just replace inside of the string whatever number this value is equal to. Hopefully that makes sense, but we'll run this and you guys will see in a second. So let's run this and let's go to Slack and let's just type a bunch of messages and just do a bunch of gibberish. And oh, I forgot that it was gonna return to us all of those messages. That's funny. But let's go /message count and let's run this. And it says we have 5 messages. Now let's send another message, okay? And let's go /message count. And how many do we have now? We have 6. And we'll send 2 more and then /message count. And we get 8, right? So it makes sense. That is how the command works. Now, I actually think I'm going to leave the video there. I will quickly just remove the fact that we're sending this post message. I actually don't want to do that. The reason I set up this message event previously was so that we could kind of transition into this, keeping track of how many messages were sent. But with that being said, that has been this tutorial. So if you guys enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and again, I will see you in another Slack bot tutorial.